Welcome to Capital Workforce Partners Today. I'm John Hampton, Communications Manager, and I'm delighted to welcome you all and particularly excited to welcome Capital Workforce Partners President and CEO Alex Johnson to the program.
Oh, my pleasure, John.
Welcome,
Happy
sir.
to be here.
Thrilled to have you here today to talk about workforce development and the importance of that issue and how it resonates now in our state and in our nation. And in particular, I want to get into Capital Workforce Partners, its history, what it does, what its purpose is, what its great work, how it affects 37 municipalities in the North Central region. So we've got a lot to cover, but we've got time. So I just wanted to, again, welcome you. And first and foremost, just share with us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to be at Capital Workforce Partners.
Oh, actually, answering that question could probably take our whole hour, but I'll try to kind of streamline it. And first and foremost, I've been with Capital Workforce Partners for about 20 years now. Workforce development is really near and dear to me in terms of an important program, really important support to our community in terms of enabling individuals, particularly those who don't have the skills, don't have the education, to really provide a support system to them to prepare them for the workforce. So I really see value in workforce development generally, and was pleased to be able to get an offer to be employed at Capital Workforce Partners 20 years ago. And I've enjoyed my stay there ever since. Just a little background beyond that, I'm a native of Connecticut, went to University of Connecticut, received my undergraduate and graduate work at the University of Connecticut, and I've worked primarily in the public sector, in education and municipal government, and ultimately landed in the workforce system.
Can you talk to us about the history of workforce development? Where it came from, how it started, the movement. My understanding is that it has its roots possibly in the Great Society and has evolved over the years.
Yeah, and actually a little before then, workforce development at the federal level, I would say, started with federal legislation back in 1933 when the federal government passed the Wagner-Peiser legislation. And Wagner-Peiser created what we know as the Department of Labor, the Unemployment Office, to really help individuals both in terms of unemployment and also connecting them back to work. So the federal government intervention in this space started then. It became more robust, as you're mentioning, with the federal legislation called the Manpower Development and Training Act that was enacted as part of Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society legislation. And that really enabled individuals and individual communities to really receive federal financial support from the federal government to really enable them to provide education and training to individuals, particularly disadvantaged populations, in order to help them get the education skills they need to get employed. And I would say the federal legislation has evolved from Manpower Development and Training Act to the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act that was enacted in 1973. I would note Capital Workforce Partners' history began under the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act program, particularly Title VII. Title VII of that program allowed for what was called the creation of private sector initiatives, also known as private industry councils. So we were one of the first incorporated private industry councils in the nation back in 1978. And that was the beginning of our organizational journey as Capital Workforce Partners. We were incorporated ourselves in 1978 under that legislation. It's also evolved through the Job Training Partnership Act program in the 80s, the Workforce Innovation Act in the 90s, and now ultimately the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that guides us today. And within it all, it has evolved. And I would say the significant change is that under the previous legislation, the federal government provided resources directly to communities. Under CETA, particularly under Title VII, as I mentioned, it was the first time that the federal government required that the private sector guide the system and really become the owners of the workforce system under the private sector initiatives program. And it has evolved from there where the private sector is looked at to be a key owner of the system, working in partnership with chief elected officials, community organizations, state agencies, to really build a coherent system to support the education and training of individuals to ensure that we're meeting the needs of both individuals and employers.
You mentioned CETA. Can you clarify that for folks?
CETA was a Comprehensive Employment and Training Act program,
Okay.
created in 1973, if I remember correctly. And I would note it also allowed for communities to organize themselves as communities to support education training of their individuals.
Now, excuse me, were you an activist early on in your career on behalf of workforce development issues?
Activists, yes, also a recipient, because I think as I look at my history, and that's why I see so much value in the work of Capital Workforce Partners and the workforce system generally. I would note that, when I was, in high school, I was a beneficiary of being able to participate in a summer youth employment program. We operate that summer youth employment program to this day. And it really enabled me to really understand the nature of work, expectations of work, gave me the work experience that I needed. And it really helped inform my thinking process as I was, in high school. And I would note that because of my participation in the summer program is why I made a decision to go to college, because I saw that, professionally, if I wanted to achieve my professional goals, that it was imperative that I go further, go to, higher education. So I do see benefits of the system to myself as well as other individuals. So my advocacy started with, being a recipient of the services now that guide us today.
So it's personal for you.
Very personal.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And before Capital Workforce Partners, where were you?
I was, prior to assuming the role at Capital Workforce Partners, I was the executive director of a workforce board in North Central Connecticut. The organization was called Workforce One. I was there for a number of years doing a similar role. And I was just there for a few years, yeah.
And you came to Capital Workforce Partners 20 years ago, you said. And what role were you in when you arrived?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was the previous executive director of a smaller workforce board, so I was really happy to receive an offer to come to Hartford. And I would note I was delighted to come to Hartford in part because I am a native of Hartford. So coming back to my native community was a good thing for me. And at the same time, it provided me for an opportunity to continue to do what I loved and enjoyed, which was really working, to ensure that workforce systems are being responsive to our customers. So I was, brought to Capital Workforce Partners as the chief operating officer. When I was connected with Capital Workforce Partners, and I've since become the president and CEO.
That was 5 years ago, correct?
7 years ago.
So, okay.
Yeah, seems like 5.
How are workforce development boards set up in the state, and who determines that? So we're Capital Workforce Partners is the North Central
That's correct.
Workforce Board, covering 37 towns, one of which is this community. And how are they set up?
As I mentioned, we're currently governed under the Federal Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And that legislation, even the previous legislation, recognized that governors had the sole responsibility to organize their state or to determine how their state was organized. That's a better way to put it. So it is through the governor in consultation with the governor's workforce council decides how we're structured. And in Connecticut, we have 5 workforce boards. Capital Workforce Partners is one of 5. I would note we are the largest workforce board in terms of covering about 1/3 of the state's population, not the state's geography. So we have a tremendous responsibility to support the capital area and ensure that we are also supporting the needs of our business community.
The organization, the oversight is the consortium of chief elected officials, correct?
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And again, going back to our enabling legislation, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act required a couple of things. One, that the governor determine the geographical configuration within the state. So we have 5 workforce boards. Each workforce area is required to organize or have its chief elected officials organized. In our region, the 37 municipalities are organized under the Capital Area Consortium of Chief Elected Officials. That the creation of the consortium is a necessary prerequisite to us being able to receive the funding. So the chief elected officials organize themselves through their organizing agreements. They have identified Capital Workforce Partners as their agent to receive the federal funds and all funds, as well as implement the program. So we serve with the support of our chief elected officials. We work in consultation with our chief elected officials. Chief elected officials appoint the members of the board of directors of Capital Workforce Partners. And we work hand in glove to ensure that both our strategic plan, our budgets, our priorities are all reviewed and approved, not just by our board of directors, but by chief elected officials.
Now, any governor could come in and change the structure of workforce development boards. Can that change per governor?
Yes, governors do have that freedom. I would note that as within the legislation, it does allow for governors to make that change. That is correct.
Okay. And in your history, was that changed in any dramatic fashion?
I would say over the course of time, as we have evolved the Connecticut system, I would note that a number of years ago when we started this journey, and it was really under the Job Training Partnership Act, there were actually 9 workforce boards in the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
That was in the 80s, and it's not because I was there, it's because I have done my homework. and so the governor created 9 areas, and over time, the system has evolved from 9 workforce organizations to what is now 5. That evolution was in part an effort to achieve a level of scale and efficiency with scale. Recognizing that some of the smaller areas had difficulty with being able to support a staffing structure and delivery structure to meet their community needs. So over time, we have evolved from what was 9 workforce boards to 5. And I would note, since I've been at Capital Workforce Partners, when I was initially employed with Capital Workforce Partners, there were 7 workforce boards. And we did a merger of the Capital Workforce Partners area with the New Britain, Bristol area. to become, as we went from 7 to 5, we did a merger with the New Britain area to really create the North Central region, what's known as the North Central region, which is the 37 municipalities that we support today. So it's been a evolving process over time, evolving with the requirements of the legislation, also evolving with the level of funding that the federal government has provided to us. And I would say Connecticut in particular has been working very aggressively to maximize the use of the federal funds. And in part, that's what guided the decision to reduce the number of boards to really create a more efficient system.
Now, how do the workforce development boards in the state, the 5, interact? How are they?
The 5 boards, we are connected through a organization called the Connecticut Workforce Development Council. Mm-hmm. I am a member of the Connecticut Workforce Development Council. Actually, all of the CEOs are members of this council, and that gives us a platform so that we can work collaboratively and we can support each other, and really recognize that even though we need to ensure that we are being responsive to our regional needs, at the same time we also need to be guided by some level of statewide connectivity, so to speak. So we really work to ensure that what we do in Hartford is not substantially different than what happens in Bridgeport, for example. And we really try to work hard to ensure that the job seeker experience is comparable, that the employer experience is comparable. So we really want to make sure that even though we are responsible for ensuring our regional needs, that there is a level of statewide consistency. And I personally believe that's extremely important, particularly given the needs of our job seekers and the needs of our business community, that irrespective of where a person lives, that they should expect a consistent and quality service, irrespective of where they live. And employers, irrespective of where they're located, should also expect similar quality and consistency of service. So we work hard to really try to build a system.
What's a common misperception of what Capital Workforce Partners does? So, is CWP a nonprofit? Are we a quasi-public agency? What kind of misperceptions would you like to clear up?
Starting with, are we government? And I would say, no, we're not government. We are a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. Other perceptions are that, all we do is summer programs, or all we do is serve disadvantaged individuals. And I would say those are part of what we do, not all of what we do. And we, particularly want employers to understand that we serve the universe of job seekers, not just those who are most in need. Yet we do have resources that enable us to target services to individuals who are most in need. But I would note that our America's Job Centers, which are open to all job seekers in our community, and we have 7 in our region, they're there to support any Connecticut resident who wants a job, wants a better job, wants information on how to get a better job. So our services are not limited to individuals who are unemployed or economically disadvantaged. We support the full workforce in our community. So I want to make that clear, because there is a perception that we only serve young people, or we only serve returning citizens. We're happy to do that. We have resources to do that, because part of our mission is to really ensure that marginalized populations have access to opportunity, and opportunity to build their skills and compete for good jobs. And I would know, as a organization, we focus in on what we refer to as middle skill jobs, those are jobs that require more than a high school diploma, less than a baccalaureate, but more important, these are jobs that provide individuals opportunities to be on a career path for upward mobility. And these are the jobs that provide income and wages that allow individuals to move towards self-sufficiency. And that's our goal, to enable individuals to achieve their individual goals, to be self-sufficient, contributing adults to our community and to our economy.
So when you talk about marginalized populations, what does that cover?
It covers a number of groups, both in terms of race, ethnicity, as well as skills, so, we don't limit to any one, but I would note that, our priority populations, for examples, are low literate adults, where irrespective of their race or ethnicity. If you have literacy challenges, that's a population group that we lean in to support, as well as individuals who have disabilities, returning citizens, individuals who are returning to the community as a result of incarceration, young people, particularly young people who are out of school, out of work. So these are the population groups that have typically not benefited from our robust economy. And therefore, particularly as we look to the data, and as a number of us are looking at the data in terms of, where's the workforce going to come from? Because every employer that we talk to, that, you may talk to, John, their first issue is, I have jobs looking for people, as opposed to people looking for jobs. And in order to meet that need, we have to go beyond just the traditional workforce and really enable individuals who typically have not been a part of the labor force to get the skills, get the knowledge, get the abilities so that they can be competitive. And we see this as a benefit, not just to our workforce system and to employers, but it also uplifts our community and our state. So that's where we really focus our efforts on.
So you hear the term from time to time, break the paper ceiling. What does that mean in terms of, it seems to refer to folks who are job ready, but they don't have a college degree and they have the desire to pursue a career. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. And as we interpret that, we rely on this notion, and we're really advancing this notion of skills-based hiring. Mm-hmm. And I would note that, our governor, through our Governor's Workforce Council, within their strategic plan, they've also identified as a priority to really lean in with employers, to work with employers to look at what are the necessary skills that a particular job needs to have, not the educational requirements that jobs are posted to have. I would note it that way. So as we look at what are the skills, it enables us to really work with educational and training institutions to provide individuals with the education and the industry recognized skills that they need. So that's a role that CWP plays. And I would note in particular, we are working with a number of IT companies in our region through our IT sector partnership to really begin to work with them to understand what are the skills that are needed in order to start their work journey. I will acknowledge that educational attainment is also important.
Sure.
Ultimately, but the question is how do we enable individuals to work and learn at the same time? So by working with employers to identify what those initial skill needs are, and then enable an individual to get the job. And then the value of that is that it also enables, through a lot of the companies, enables individuals to also get resources from the employer to help fund their educational journey while they're continuing to work. So this is a strategy that's fairly new. We're excited by it because it enables us to immediately connect individuals, to jobs. And at the same time, it also provides our employers with a steady flow of hires, recognizing that individuals need to continue that development journey, but they could do that while they're earning a good wage.
You mentioned regional sector partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on, please, on what those are?
Yes, regional sector partnerships, these are industry-led sectorial groups. And in the Capital Workforce Partners region, we have 4 industry-led sectorial groups. They are in the sectors of IT, as I mentioned, and we have one in healthcare. We have another in advanced manufacturing, and then a 4th in transportation, distribution, and logistics. They're regional sector partnerships in that their focus is on what are the needs of the regional employers. So it's not a body that's trying to solve our issues at the state level. It's how are we organize ourselves regionally. It enables, Capital Workforce Partners to work with employers so we can understand not just what one employer's needs are, but within the sector, what are their aggregate needs. Also enables us to have conversations across companies so that we can also assess what are the required entry-level skills across employers. So in healthcare, for example, we're not limited to necessarily what, United Health, requires as entry. We also work with other healthcare employers so we can see what is common. What are the common skills as we're training individuals so that they have the opportunity to compete for jobs in a variety of healthcare environments. So that's the value of having these sectorial partnerships because it enables us to, number one, be clear in terms of what are the not just the needs of employers, but what are the skill needs of employers, both in terms of the credentials that individuals need, but also through these sector partnerships, we're having very robust conversations around, the need for Capital Workforce Partners and training providers to also be more sensitive to the, what we refer to as essential skills. We've kind of called them in the past soft skills, work readiness skills, but these are, the behavioral skills that individuals need to have in order to survive on the job. They range from everything from being, being able to learn, being innovative, creative, being able to work in teams, having the skills to get there on time, not leave early, be able to interact effectively with your team members, with your supervisors. We've always referred to them as soft skills, but increasingly they're becoming the hard skills that individuals need to have, in addition to that industry recognized credential. So we as a system need to make sure that we're preparing individuals in a way that enables them to learn and exhibit their essential skills as well as getting their industry recognized certificates. And as we're doing that, it enables us to really clearly understand the needs of employers, and it enables us to translate that information back to our job seekers. So our job seekers know what they need to do to prepare themselves for these good jobs in our community.
No, I know you're a big advocate for work-based learning.
That's correct.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Yes, and again, and it kind of ties back at the time when I participated as a youth in our summer program. It wasn't referred to as work-based learning. It was just a summer job. But increasingly, we're very sensitive. And I would also say that, as we look at the national data is clear that the better we're able to expose young people in high school with opportunities to work and to learn within the workplace, the more successful they're going to be in high school, the more successful they're going to be in college and careers and in life. So as we think about work-based learning, it really provides individuals with opportunities to learn in the workplace. And as I mentioned, my learning started with my first summer job. And because I had that job, it helped me understand what I needed to do to prepare myself for a career, and enabled me to really make the decision that I needed to go to college. Not that I wanted to go, but I needed to go if I was going to achieve my vision for my professional goals for myself. So work-based learning has that benefit to individuals. It exposes them to careers, it exposes them to the workplace, and it really complements what individuals are learning in the classroom. And I believe that the better we're able to do that for young people in the schools, do it at scale, the more successful young people will be as they matriculate to adults.
So we have a couple of our first partners uh, is involved in the work-based learning network, correct?
Correct.
And how does that work?
Yes, and again, because we're so dedicated to this work, we are a backbone organization, really a host convening organization for a network of organizations to really look at how are we standardizing work-based learning. How are we standardizing how we assess the learning? How do we develop a learning plan for a young person prior to them taking on a job experience? So how do we do that learning plan? How do we assess the learning? And how do we connect that learning back to the educational system so it becomes part of that young person's portfolio? So each organization approaches this issue differently, with the same intent, but we all do it a little differently. And the work-based learning network is really to look at how are we not doing this differently, but how are we doing this collectively in a consistent way so that the experience of our young person who we serve is not dictated by the particular organization that serves them, that their experience will be consistent irrespective of what organization serves them. Their learning experience will be consistent. How they're assessed will be consistent. So that's really the purpose of the Work-Based Learning Network, is to really build that level of consistency, and at the same time, using that network as a way to also continue to look at, national best practices so that we're not reinventing the wheel, that we're learning from other communities who are doing similar work. So we're really doing this to get better at what we do.
Related but segueing to summer youth employment, you talked about your background, and CWP is nationally, statewide known for its summer youth employment program,
Mm-hmm.
and that's upon us coming soon. We're preparing for that. Can you talk about the success of that program and how important it is?
Yeah, very, very important. And as I mentioned, I assess its importance. Started with how important it's been to me, but more importantly, it's been invaluable to a host of young people. I'm always, gratified when individuals, young people, that you meet in the community but acknowledge, I was in CWP summer program, and because of my experience, is why I'm now doing A, B, and C. So I really, appreciate, that kind of feedback where young people have gone to college, become professionals in a variety of areas, starting with their participation in the summer program. But as you mentioned, we have a very unique summer program that's unique nationally, and it's unique in a couple of ways. First, we built it intentionally to support individuals based on their age / level of workforce maturity. So it's a tiered system, tiered 1 through 3. Tier 1 is really designed to support young people, young learners, particularly individuals who are, 14 to 15-year-olds, probably in ninth grade. At that level, it's really designed to give them information. So there's a lot of experiences around project-based learning. What are careers? What do I need to do? If I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, what does that mean in terms of my educational needs? What do I need to do to prepare myself? And then also gives them an opportunity to look at other work sites. So it's a process of exposing them to the workplace, exposing them to careers. So that's our tier 1 system. Once they have that exposure, tier 2 is designed to provide individuals some continued support in terms of their career development, but at the same time, it also connects individuals to a job, but a job in what we refer to as a supportive environment. So the job could be primarily within a community organization, for example, or a nonprofit, or maybe a state government organization, so that they're getting maximum support while they're learning, because they're learning. They're learning how to respond to supervision, how to respond to direction, how to be there on time, the essential skills that I mentioned earlier. And then tier 3, as individuals have developed those skills from tier 1 and tier 2, by the time they get to tier 3, they're ready to compete in the market, so to speak. So they're then placed in traditional work environments where they're expected to know what to do, know how to behave, and they're there to do a job. So our progressive system recognizes the development needs of young people, and we built that tier structure to support it. And that's why our summer program is so unique, and that's why, we don't label our program the summer employment program. We label our program the summer youth employment and learning program.
Yep.
Because we want to ensure that there's a significant learning component, as well as giving young people an opportunity to earn some money.
What was your job when you were in the program?
Actually, I had a couple, but I say the one that resonates the most. Actually, I worked in the with the Hartford Public Works Department, and I was assigned to work in Elizabeth Park.
Cool.
And working with the Park and Rec Department, and in particular, working to ensure that those rose gardens in Elizabeth Park were manicured.
So we owe you for that.
Yes.
They look great.
Yes. I did my part. Yeah. I will admit, I did my part.
Yeah.
And that was my learning, with my initial learning experience, and it helped in a couple of ways, because at the end of the program, I would note that I would, go to the park more often, to just look at what I did.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to showcase this rose garden here looks like this, because I was on my hands and knees, doing the weeding, doing the manicuring to make it look that good. So
Sure.
there was some gratification there.
And pride.
Right, and some pride, and
Right.
at the same time, it enabled me to earn some money that helped, and then it also helped inform my thought process, in terms of, what do I want to do when I kind of grow up and leave high school, is that my journey, and if that's not my journey, what do I need to do about it? So it was a fulfilling experience. And as I mentioned, I did make a decision that as much as I enjoyed it, it wasn't something I wanted to do as my life's mission. And that's what informed me, my decision-making process to say, I need to go to college after high school.
We discussed earlier returning citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of our highlights of CWP's work is the Best Chance initiative. Can you provide an overview of that program?
Oh, most definitely happy to. And I would say we have supported returning citizens as an organization throughout our 45-year history. But I will say of recent, and I think it was maybe about 5 years ago, we were fortunate to be able to receive some state funding from the state to implement a program specific to meet the needs of returning citizens. And at the time, the thinking was that we would pilot the project in the Hartford area with the intent of replicating it statewide. And the pilot was to pilot this model that we had really did a lot of research on and learned to respect and want to bring into Connecticut. It was from Washington State. It was called the IBEST model.
Mm-hmm.
And IBEST stands for Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training. So it was a delivery model that recognized that individuals, particularly this population, had needs for getting industry recognized credentials, but they also had learning deficiencies and recognizing that they needed to be able to get a job quickly. The traditional path would be go to an adult ed and get your literacy skills up, and then go to a certificate program and then get your industry recognized credential. The IBEST model basically challenged organizations to do those two things concurrently. And it really promoted this notion of co-teaching, where there would be an educator in the classroom helping individuals, supporting their basic skill needs in reading and math primarily. And then there would be another instructor teaching them the skill. And this training would happen concurrently. And I would note that was the birth of, our CWP IBEST training program. We've continued to support it, and I would note that our support from the state, even though there was a desire to fund it with the thought of relocation, as we know, things change at the state level. And largely the state withdrew a lot of its financial support. But as an organization, because it's been working for that population, it's achieving very positive results in terms of enabling individuals to get the training they need and get good jobs. And the data showing that we're placing individuals at a high rate and they're retaining those jobs at 90%, that we needed to make sure the program continued. So we work hard yearly with our foundation, communities, through our advocacy, to the state, because the state does provide us with modest support. But also we've been able to receive some support through our congressional delegation, particularly Senator Murphy and Blumenthal, to get some federal support. And the program really meets the needs of that particular population, and it enables them to get good jobs. So we're really excited at the success of that program. It's something that we want to continue to do. We will continue to figure how we get it funded from year to year. But more importantly, it is that vehicle that's dedicated solely to meeting the needs of that population. They need a second chance. Our BIS program gives them that second chance and really gets them connected into the economy, gets them good jobs.
And then I know the organization does a lot for those with disabilities. We have programs aimed at folks with disabilities to gain access to meaningful employment, correct?
That is correct, yeah. And I would note we do that, and I would also acknowledge that we do that with a lot of support through our state partners, particularly the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. And we have a very strong relationship with that organization, and they're able to, to complement what CWP is able to provide to this particular population, because we don't necessarily say we can support you if you have this particular barrier, but not this barrier. Any individual who has a disability, we strive to support them, whether it's in a full-time job or a part-time job. We really try to work to ensure that they're able to maximize their abilities, their capacity. Again, it's a way for us to also provide a meaningful experience for individuals, and at the same time, it also enables us to meet critical needs that employers have. So again, that's a population, and I would note we're able to do that because of the support we get from other partner organizations, particularly with the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. And I would also just note that as I talked about the iBest program previously, I would also note that it's successful in part because of what CWP is doing, but also because of the support that we've been able to get through a number of partner organizations. So we work very closely with the Hartford Reentry Center, and I would like to specifically note the partnership we have with CPA and the work that organization is doing, and that's part of who we are as a organization. We recognize that we could do a lot, but we can do even more if we're working in partnership with other organizations. So we lean on organizations such as CPA to help us understand the needs of returning citizens. We're not trying to, be experts in everything. We're experts in workforce development. We're experts in what employers are looking for.
The Career Connect program, how is CWP involved in that initiative?
Okay, yeah, happy. And I just want to start, the Career Connects program is a initiative of our Governor Lamont, who, really through his leadership had made a decision and a commitment to support workforce development financially. So it enables the workforce system to be the beneficiary of not just our federal funding, but state funding as well in a significant way. So he made a significant commitment of $110 million to support investing in the workforce system to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community with a focus on helping those individuals who were most impacted as a result of the pandemic, enabling them to get the training and skills they need to re-enter the economy. So the program is really built to support individuals in key sectors within the state. So the state has recognized advanced manufacturing, healthcare, IT, and transportation, distribution, and logistics, but primarily transportation and green jobs tied to construction jobs as those priority sectors. So they've identified those 5 priority sectors. I'm happy to note that Capital Workforce Partners through a application process, has been awarded funding to lead on a statewide basis two sector initiatives. The IT sector initiative, in part because of the work that we've been doing, as I mentioned earlier, with our regional sector partnership in IT, and the work that we're doing as we're really working with employers to understand and implement skills-based hiring strategies. So we were recognized as doing that work, and we're awarded a contract to really drive and lead that effort statewide. Capital Workforce Partners has also been awarded funding to also lead the transportation training effort statewide, in part because of our regional sector partnership that was unique to the state. And through that partnership, we built some very strong and significant relationships with transportation companies. And they were very supportive of our application and very supportive of Capital Workforce Partners leading this effort to ensure that they were supported. And the effort really enables the workforce system, because I would also note that there is another board that's leading healthcare, and there's another workforce board leading advanced manufacturing, and then a third board leading the green jobs. But it enables individuals, irrespective of where they're living in the state, through the Career Connects portal that I mentioned earlier, where individuals can go in, identify themselves, get themselves registered, and enables them to determine what program they want to take advantage of. And there's a full range of programs in those 5 sector areas. The good news of this program also is that we're really focused on short-term credentials, so that individuals can get that immediate credential and then immediately connected to employment. And also what's unique about this program is it also provides us with supports for us to support the needs of the job seekers, not just covering their costs of training, but enables us to pay a stipend, because we recognize that there's a cost to participating in training. So we're able to provide individuals with a stipend, and to help them afford the ability to participate. Through the effort of our governor, I just want to compliment him on that vision, because it is a game changer, so to speak, for us in the field, to have that resource to complement the federal funding that we receive, the other state funding that we receive. It really enables us to really provide a full and holistic support to our community.
We'll put up the the link to the portal for folks to access. So 45 years of CWP. What are your goals for the next 45 that you're at the helm? What are your priorities?
Right. First of all, how many of those 45 I'm going to still be here? I think that's question one. But I think, and I just wanted to note that the vision and the for Capital Workforce Partners is really driving closing the skills gap.
Mm-hmm.
And we leverage public and private resources in order to achieve that outcome. So as I look at the future of Capital Workforce Partners, I don't see anything changing in terms of the driver, the vision, how we do things. I do see us responding to the needs that will surface over time. But I guess what I will note that, the value of CWP, I think, has to be, stay in the forefront, because as an organization, we exist to serve our community, serve our job seeker community, serve our business customers, do that work in a efficient, collaborative, cooperative, transparent way, and do it with respect to the people that we serve. So I see us continuing to get better at, what we do and how we do it. And I see us increasingly making an impact on the lives of the people we serve, an impact on the ability of businesses to attract and retain the talent that they're looking for, and continuing to make a significant contribution to our regional and state economy. So those are the drivers, and I just see Capital Workforce Partners continuing to get better at what we do and how we do it. And we've learned a lot from our experience as being a organization that's celebrating 45 years. As I mentioned earlier, we've evolved over time. The structure has evolved over time. The needs have evolved over time. We have to continue to be mindful that, our federal support also needs to be reauthorized. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And also, I would just hope that the work that our Governor Lamont has started will not end with his term, and that Connecticut will see the value of that investment. Because at the end of the day, one final data point that I just want to note, that as companies are constantly asking the question, where is the talent going to come from? We did an analysis that said in our region, there's about 130,000 people who are of working age. But of that 130,000 people, only about a third are in some way connected to the labor force. That means there's 2/3, almost 90,000 people that are of working age who are not connected to work. That's where the labor force is going to come from. But I would also note that they're not working in part because they don't have the skills, they don't have the abilities, they don't have the wherewithal. And that's why we need to be thoughtful that we need to continue to make an investment in people. And I would argue and I promote that an investment in what we do is an investment in human capital that provides a return on that investment. So I just want to continue to note that I see that as where we're going. That's where we're going to continue to go. And again, been happy to be here to have this conversation with you, John.
Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you for your time and overview of the workforce development issues, but of Capital Workforce Partners and its impact on the North Central area, but on the state, because Capital Workforce Partners is the premier workforce development board in the state. So I thank you for your leadership and for being here today. For folks at home, we're going to put up a link to the website so folks can visit the website, learn more, and we'll be reaching out more to our communities with further information and support. We're always available to support our member towns and avail ourselves of our services and programs and resources. So happy 45th anniversary. Thank you so much for being here today, and we'll see you next time on Capital Workforce Partners Today. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.